Hello. So, good afternoon. Thank you for still being around. I know it's not easy considering that we're one of the last sessions. I'm going to do a presentation on some of my experiences with Git and Composer and some of the stuff I've been doing with Drush to make life easier for those that use Composer with Drupal 7. Some shameless plugs before I start my session. I work for Wunder, as you can see from my shirt also. I'm also part of the team organizing Drupal Dev Days in Lisbon. I would recommend you all to go, except we're running out of tickets, so if you all go, I will have to stop the ticket sales sometime between that part and that part. So this is the title of the session, Git and Composer Workflows for Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. Before we start, how many people are already doing Drupal 8 with Composer? Everyone, well done. How many of you are doing Drupal 7 with Composer? Woo! Okay, so you can come here and we co-present this. Okay, good. So, so in summary, I'll be talking about Drupal build systems. I'll show a bit about Make so that we're all have the right perspective, and then I'll talk about Git. So, as you know, we have two major build systems in Drupal. We have Drush Make, we have Composer. The things are more or less at this moment split in Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 versions. Everyone that's doing Drupal 8 is not doing Drush Make, and everyone that's doing Drupal 7 is not doing Composer. This should change, among others, because there's not much future in Drush Make. In Drush there is a lot of future. There was this idea when Drupal 8 was young and new that console would obsolete Drush and it would be the new thing and Drush would fade away into history. But from what I gather, both projects are now collaborating and Drush will continue. Console is probably the one that's going to stop existing. And but Drush Make is gone. Drush Make existed between Drush 5 and Drush 8. Drush 9, the newest version, does not have any support for the Make infrastructure anymore, which is good. There are, unfortunately, a lot of things wrong with Drush Make. One of them is that there's two flavors. Another, which is the good part, is you can build a site and specify which core version you want, which project version you want for module teams. You can specify which libraries you want, and the libraries are very easy to specify. There's support for just-in-time patching. And this is, during the build, you are going to be able to say, I want this module patched with this and that patch. We've all done that, haven't we? And then, there's for libraries and for modules, you can download stuff from Git and SVN. Anybody still remember SVN? And the great Git migration, that was fun. And Bazaar, which I actually never used. There was this idea at one point that the world was like, oh, are we going to go to Git? Are we going to go to Bazaar? Bazaar disappeared way faster than anybody expected. And then there's this amazing command line that you can use with Drush. It's basically Drush Make Generate. So you have a site that doesn't have a Drush Make file. And you want to, or you imagine your client tells you, hey, I've got this Drupal site, I want you to maintain it. I get this a lot. And they give you the Git repo, and the Git repo has everything in it. All the source code files for all the libraries, all the source code files for Drupal core, contrib, everything, and the kitchen sink is there, and you want to make it sane because you don't want to deal with megabytes of commits. So you just you can build this. You can call this little command line. It will generate a makefile from an existing project, and it's really good. I use it a lot. It's not perfect. It doesn't build the site, because if you get from a client, probably the client acts the thing in many different places. There's patches everywhere, and you need to figure out which patches are there. But this at least is a start. Now the versions that exist, there's this ini format, which if you used Windows, you will know why it's called ini format. This is how people used to specify configuration to Windows programs before the active directory or the registry or whatever the thing was called was created. There was this ini files that contained all the configuration for a given Windows program, and it followed this structure. And this is probably one of the simplest sites that you could build. So this is a 759 site. It has admin menu. It has views. Views was patched for something which I can't remember, some illegal choice in 0 whatever, and it's using the Zen theme. And I just tried it a while ago. If you take this file and you do Drush make, it will build a site for you. This is the same exact site in YAML format, which is the one I prefer. You can see it's a lot easier to read, but on the other hand, it's a lot more verbose. Whereas this one has like 10 lines, this one has at least 50% more. But it's way easier to understand what's going on there. Yeah, this was the point where we could do a demo. I'll do the demo afterwards. And now we've got Composer coming in. So Composer is a dependency manager for PHP. There's a lot of dependency managers out there. There's NPM that everybody knows for node packages. There's a lot more for Python, which I can't remember the name at the moment. Composer works very well with semantic versioning, which is something I'll speak about later. And the good part about this is, whereas with Drush, with Drush make, you have to specify exact version numbers. You cannot say, I want you to install version 3 and above. There is a way where you don't specify in Drush make, you don't specify any version at all, and it will just install the latest, which is good as long as you are not with the problem that your site for some reason is using version 2 of admin menu, and if you don't specify the version, it will dump you into version 3, and you might not want that. So semantic version tries to address that, and it's not supported by Drush make, which is one of its faults. Composer handles that quite well. There's this notion of packages, which are the package repositories. So everyone else that does PHP is using this packagist. The default one. You can find every package in the world there. You were going to say something? Okay. Drupal decided, yeah, we'll do two packages. We'll do a packagist for Drupal 8 and a packagist for Drupal 7, which is good and bad because that kind of creates a problem with the semantic versioning, as we can discuss now. So what is semantic versioning? Everybody knows what semantic versioning is? Well, some people don't. So the idea is you have 3 version numbers. In Drupal we used to have only 2, up to Drupal 8, where we switched to semantic versioning. You've got a major version. In the case of everything in Drupal now, it's either 8 or 7, the major version. Then you've got the minor version. So the major version, you've got lots of new features. In Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, it's not even that it's not backwards compatible. The thing is so different, it's barely even the same product. Then you've got the minor version, which is the second number, And in this one, you have new functionality in a way that doesn't break backwards compatibility. So if you've got something that works with Drupal 8.4, it should still work with Drupal 8.5. So yeah, that's the backwards compatibility. And then you've got the Z, which is the minor one. That one doesn't introduce any new features, or it should not introduce any new features if you are following the idea of semantic versioning correctly. And this is the way that Drupal, the release cycle is happening at the moment. It's exactly this way. So everything that we are doing now that's new is going into Drupal core 8.6, and only the security fixes, the bug fixes, very small new functionality that might be interesting and needed can get in at this minor level. So every 6 months we increase the minor version. Why is that a problem with this? Mostly because this is already specifying the major version at packages level. So whenever you do your versions in your composer file, you never start it with 7 dot something, because we don't, actually you do, but for Drupal. Drupal core you still specified the major version, but for your contrib modules, even though they are all supposedly 8.1.0, you specify them as 1.0 only. Which is then funny because that's one, the dev part is 8.x-dev, complicated. So the thing that I also want to discuss for those that don't know composer versioning, there's these exact ranges and wildcards that are very easy to understand. They work as you expect. If you specify an exact version, you get that exact version. The tilde in the caret is the one that's more complicated. Basically, as you can see, the major difference is if you're specifying the minor version, and you use the tilde, it will never go above if you specify the patch version, it will never go above the minor version that you specified. It will stay within 1.2 something. Whereas if you use the caret, then it can change both the patch version and minor version, but it will never go up in the major version, so it stays between 1 point something and 2 point something, which again is the problem with Drush make, because you cannot say to Drush make, I want the Drupal views module of branch 2 with a stable release. This is the great new thing about Composer. Yeah, so one of those things that I would say to anyone working with Composer, you run Composer update only once, and you never ever run it again unless you really need it. So you create your project. There is no Composer lock created. You run Composer update. It will create your lock file. From that moment on, if you need anything added to your Composer JSON, you usually should not manually edit it. The exception to manually editing the Composer file is if you need patches. There's no way to say, or at least that I know of, there's no way to say, Composer patch for me this project with the following patch. So you need to go into the composer.json file and add it there. The good thing is the C-Wigan's Composer patches doesn't need you to update Composer lock completely. So you can basically just say then afterwards, after adding a patch, that you want to update the project that you patched. It will change only that section, and anything that it depends on that requires new versions. And you should not, it should basically just change a couple of your versions. It should not change Symfony to a completely different version. Yeah, so and during deployment, so basically you built your site with Composer, created the log file, you committed the Composer JSON and the Composer log file, and now you're going to deploy it on your server, on your live server. Are you going to run Composer update again? No, because then probably it will download stuff that you never tested it with. There's a reason why the Composer lock is good. It's in ISO terms, it's called configuration management. When you developed, you were using a certain configuration with a certain version of Symfony, of whatever. You run a Composer update that's wild. You're going to maybe use another completely different version of Symfony and other libraries, and you have no control. You're basically running something you never tested. So never do that. Do this on deployment. There is also the problem. There's during deployment, is it a good idea to just have the same Git repo as you used during development? Because a lot of people want to have a repo that contains all the libraries, all the vendor files, etc., etc. I still haven't gotten to a good conclusion on that. I think that Composer is not a deployment tool. Composer is something that you use during development. Git is also a thing that you use during development. For deployment, you should maybe leverage those two, but you should also have like a fixed image of what you're going to deploy built with something else that maybe is not any of those two. Yeah, so everyone that's doing Composer in Drupal is probably using the Drupal project, which is stored in GitHub for now, unless the maintainers decide to move it to GitLab. The Composer template provides the correct location of Drupal packages. It provides the configuration, and it installs the directory installers. So there's a library that allows you to select for this project, like Drupal views, Drupal views for 8, not anymore, but for like Drupal paragraphs that you want to have installed in modules contrib. You don't want it in vendor. By default, Composer would install it in vendor. You don't want that, so you use the Composer installers to move it from vendor into modules contrib. So that's what's provided also by this template. It also comes with a library that allows you to patch stuff, and it contains Drush, console, etc., etc., and some scaffolds that basically prevents you from using Drush download to grab modules. And the specific version for Drupal 7 of Drupal project, it's got a few specific things. So there's the location of Drupal 7 packages in it, of course. So one of the things that we don't have, and we have for Drupal 8, we have a Composer JSON in Drupal 8, specified by Drupal 8. And that composer.json of Drupal core contains the PHP extensions that Drupal core requires. Drupal 7 unfortunately doesn't contain a composer JSON, so we don't have a way to say to run Drupal core you need these extensions. So that has to be provided by this project. Well, it provides the same composer patches library that for Drupal 8 that we use in Drupal 8. And it also contains a patch to the preserve paths library that makes it work. So this library, the preserve paths, it has to do a bit with how Composer works. Composer by default will delete everything that's under a specific package. So when you install Drupal core, anything that's below the root of Drupal core gets deleted. And that's quite unfortunate for Drupal 7 because all our modules custom modules, contrib modules, they all reside under sites all, usually. And if you don't have the preserve paths library, they all get wiped out. And it's very funny because I keep getting reports of people that say, hey, but it deleted all my custom code. Yeah, well, did you configure your composer JSON for Drupal 7 using this library as is specified by the project? And then it's got some configuration that's what you need. So this is very simple. To create a new project, you would use these command lines. There is a word of caution here that is both applicable to Drupal 7 and to Drupal 8. And this is a caveat that a lot of people don't get it. Nowadays, the servers might be running PHP 5.6, whereas your development site, your development computer might be running PHP 7 or PHP 7.0 or PHP 7.1. And unfortunately, the versions of Symfony that get installed, depending whether you're using PHP 5 or PHP 7.0 or PHP 7.1, are completely different. So what might happen is you haven't specified this little thing in your config, and then you build your site, you run Composer update because you just created it, you do Composer install, you test it, everything's fine, you deploy it to live, and nothing works because, hey, the version of PHP is different between your site and the live site, between your development site and the live site. So if you specify this configuration, and if you say here, what is the exact version of PHP that you have on the production server, even on the development server, no package will be installed that you don't have the capability to run in the production server. By default, none of these projects have this configuration. The README of both projects have that, but there is no way that, unfortunately, there's no semantic versioning here. There is no way to say the platform that it supports platform of PHP 5.5 or above. You need to specify a specific version here, and for people that would be running Drupal 7, PHP 7, if you specify the minimum of Drupal 8, which is up to now still 559, then they wouldn't get the goodies of PHP 7, which is the super speed that it has. So you have to configure this according to your project. So the problem with Composer is we had the INI format a few slides back, which was very good, very compact, very small, contained everything. Then the YAML, which got a little bit bigger. The Composer format is way even bigger. So this one is the same site as I showed before, except I couldn't put all the lines in here. I can show them to you nowadays, just after. So there's the location of the Composer packages. There's the installers package that will move your modules into modules site-sol modules contrib. There's Composer patches, which allows you to do patching. There's preserve paths, which basically whenever you update something, and I did this a lot, unfortunately, a few weeks ago during the updates to Drupal 7.58 and 7.59, whereas if this preserve path was not there, because it was updating core, everything in the core would just get wiped out, and my sites would have a new version of Drupal that was not affected by DrupalGaddon, but it would not have any of the modules nor features, anything. The whole sites directory would be wiped out. It wouldn't even be able to connect to the database because default settings would also be wiped out. So that is necessary for Drupal 7. It's not necessary for Drupal 8. Then finally we've got the admin menu, the views. There's this little caret here, which is the amazing thing. So nowadays when I don't actually have 759 in a few of my sites that I'm running with Composer. I think one of them is like 754, and I don't even update the JSON anymore. I just do Composer update Drupal core, Drupal, which is the version here, and it just updates my Composer lock, and that gets installed on my site automatically on deployment. Yeah, so then it also specifies Drush, and there's lines here a lot. One thing before we go to the demo that I want to show is what I was doing recently to Drush, which is many of us are doing our Drupal 7 sites with make files, and it would be such a problem to recreate the Composer JSON from scratch. So I'm not sure if the latest version of Drush already has this. I know it's been committed to Drush dev, but I think that Moshe Weitzman needs to commit to release a new version of Drush with this patch in it. But for the latest version of the dev, you just run drush make convert your makefile, format Composer into Composer JSON, and you've got a working Composer JSON that would work for your 90% of the cases. It does not convert libraries. Libraries are bloody complicated, so I would refer to the readme.md to understand how to specify them. There's some post-convert enhancements that you should do. Basically, add the scaffolding so that you cannot do drush DL to add a module anymore, and add this patch to Composer patches, because the problem that we have at the moment is preserve paths is not needs to call a hook on CWigan's Composer patches to tell it, hey, if there's a patch in core and I'm updating stuff, you need to understand that you need to repatch it. It's a lot of interaction between all these Composer libraries. You need that, or else stuff doesn't get built correctly. So let me try for a simple demo. The YAML.make that I showed a while ago, I'll just quickly run it. So this has now built the correct site. It's all here, and we go to the version that has a Composer JSON here, and we can see the contents of the Composer JSON. So it's got all the PHP extension requirements at the beginning. Then it's got the modules that I want. Then it's got some stuff. I really like this one, sort packages. When you do Composer require, normally it will add lines at the end. So for every commit that you do, you will have 2 lines changed, because there's a little comma that gets inserted in there that changes that line, and then you've got the new one without the comma. If you do sort packages, in most of the cases, unless you're adding a package that starts with Z, stuff will just go here in the middle, because Drush, in this case Drush is the last one, and if you use all the packages from the project, the Drupal 7 project, then there will be a web flow here, and basically, unless it starts with Z, nothing will get after that. So sort packages is something nice, and then you've got the installer paths that basically say, move, if it's a Drupal library, move it to sites or libraries. If it's a module, a Drupal module, move it to sites or modules contrib. And if it's a Drupal theme, same thing. Then there's a patch that I added here to views. And then you need to specify the preserve paths. So these are places where whenever you upgrade any of the packages, including Drupal core, the contents should not get deleted. So you need to specify basically everything that would get changed. All the places that, like the contrib for modules, themes, the places for the libraries, all of that needs to be specified here, because if you are upgrading Drupal core, you don't want it to that all your custom, that all your contrib stuff is deleted. You also need to specify custom features, because again, you don't want your stuff to be deleted. Even though if you've already committed it, retrieving it would be a simple method of just doing git checkout. So let me just quickly remove web and vendor, and now do composer install. And this, as you can see, it's deploying Drupal 759, it's applying the views, then it's installing a lot of stuff from Symfony and whatever, also because we're installing Drush, so all the dependencies of Drush itself also get installed, and one of the Symfony is one of those. And ta-da! We've got it installed, and if we were to do a diff, so even better. So you can see between the T2, which was the one that was built by Make, and Web, which was the one that was built by Composer, there's only two things that are different. One of them was that the Composer version installed ctools. We are installing views, and ctools is a necessary dependency. So I would have problems with my Make version because I didn't specify ctools there. It would not allow me to enable views until to the moment that I also added ctools to the Make file. You don't, in this case, in Composer, you don't need that because it resolves the dependencies for you. And the patches.txt that get created by each differ. One of them does clearly say that it was created by Drush. So the other thing I want to do is so this was the command that I used to create the Composer JSON that you just saw. Basically, Drush make convert the make file -- format equals Composer, and type it out to Composer JSON. And as you can see, we've got the Composer JSON that was created. And if we remove the Composer lock and run composer install. It will create the JSON file, the log file again, but we don't need to see that, or else it will take some time. Focus. Okay, so some Git best practices. You all know Git. Here. Hello? You all know Git? Okay, good. You've got this boatload of stuff, plus this boatload of stuff that I will only refer back if needed. I would suggest that everyone probably also knows the Git workflow, but I'll just briefly explain it here because I've seen a lot of people that don't get it. The idea behind Git workflow, which is was proposed a few years ago in this blog post, is you have a master branch, which is your light site, which is that one over there. Then you've got a develop or stage branch, whatever you prefer to call it, which is your staging site, which is the purple line there, and pull requests from stage go to master, and then you've got your feature branches, which are the little green ones there, and those are where whenever you're working on a ticket, you create that feature branch, then you do peer review on them, or you even test it out directly. One of those, another plug that I can do, and I really like, it's Platform SH. When you have this model and you've got your Git repository integrated with their system, it will automatically create an instance, a virtual machine that is running just that little bit with the same database and configuration as the parent, and you can directly test what your changes are. So it's very convenient. You can also do this on your own machines. Somehow discover there's a new branch, let's launch a virtual machine with this configuration. And then you do peer review on that branch, and then you accept it. It goes back into stage, and at some point the client reviews all of these, it gets approved to go to your live site, and then you merge it back into the master branch. And this is a simplified way of working without getting crazy on what is getting merged to what. Some other people just use master. It's called the centralized version, and it's basically everything is committed to master. And at some point somebody decides, okay, now we are going to deploy master to the production site, so nobody commit anything until we finish. That model has so many issues. I think everybody that's doing professional work is following this master, stage, and feature branches. Some people add a few more steps in the middle. So there's like a develop branch that's separate, where while the client is reviewing, you're also sending stuff to your development server. That gets used more, I think, in places where you will automatically build whatever goes into develop, and you don't need to worry about spinning up, detecting that there's a branch and spinning up some complicated infrastructure just for a new branch. You always update whatever is in develop. Some other elements that I would like to say. When you're working with Git and Composer, configure the .gitignore correctly. So whatever you want to have in your Git repo and whatever you do not want to have in your Git repo, specify it. Gitignore is very flexible. I have a version that with some stuff that I'm showing later. Commit your Composer JSON and your Composer lock. There's a lot of people that I've met which just commit the Composer JSON and because they don't commit the composer lock, they're basically running composer update all the time that they want to do deployment. Do use semantic versions on your composer JSON file. Those of us that are used to Drush make, it might be comfortable to just say, hey, on my composer file, I want to specify that I will have Drupal 7.59. And if there's ever a 760, which hopefully there will be, without being Drupal 4 or 5, I don't know the number by now, without, so I've got lost here, sorry. If you use semantic versions, you don't need to worry about keeping the composer JSON updated at all times. You just go in, and if you see, oh, I'm okay with just upgrading everything, or I just need to update one of them, I'll just say composer require Drupal/Drupal 760. It will update with dependencies, like I shown before. It will update that one. It will also update the composer JSON just a bit. But you might not, or you just say you don't even need to say 760. You can just say composer update Drupal/Drupal with dependencies, and your composer JSON will stay the same. Your composer lock gets changed, and it all works fine. Don't run composer update ever, please. Unless you really know what you're doing, you are probably going to update a lot of stuff that you might not need to update. So it might be sane from time to time to actually do this. So you do a release, and then you say, okay, now we can go to whatever new version of Symfony has just been released. I don't care. We will test it during the next sprint. So I'm okay with going from Symfony 3.3.5 to Symfony 3.3.7. Don't commit /vendor. Don't commit sites all modules contrib. Don't commit core itself. I find it so weird that I see Git repos that are full of code which is available elsewhere, and whenever I see a pull request for an update. So if you do this correctly, whenever you update core for the next Drupal security release or the next release, the only change is composer lock. Nothing else changes. If you commit all of this crap, instead of one file changing and probably just one line which is easy to peer review, you've got thousands of files that are being changed. You have no idea what's going on in there. You're just going to actually just press it. So why are you even keeping it in your repo? Or at least keep a separate repo for that. Do a deployment repo that just gets one branch with tags, and whenever you build to the light side, you commit stuff to that repo, and the developers never even see that repo ever. But the development repository should be as clean as possible. I can show you some of my own Git repos, and they basically have nothing in them. They just have the custom code that I do, and maybe a couple of files like, I don't know, the Google site verification. So this is more or less what I would recommend you do whenever you're working on your site. And we're probably out of time. You do a git checkout -b to create a new branch for your ticket. You do your work. You rebase to the parents, because while you did your work, other stuff might have gone in there. That stuff is already there. And if you don't do rebase, it might be that you'll have merge conflicts that are just so easy to avoid. Do Drush sex if you're in Drupal 8. In Drupal 7, do Drush FUA, which is the features update. Check the changes that you're going to commit into your repo. Sometimes somebody just decided for some weird reason to add some blank lines somewhere, and you don't get why this file got changed, just check all the things that are going in. It might be that somebody left in some printfs or some console logs or some DPM with debug information that doesn't need to go into the repo. Then I'll add all your files, commit them with a nice commit message. Don't just say to the commit message, did the work. Actually specify something useful. Then create your pull requests on whatever you use. I would recommend that you use one of these three. And then merge it probably in the UI of the pull request into your stage branch or whatever it is, the developer branch that you use. Yeah, so this is a correctly configured gitignore for Drupal 7. The only thing I want to specify here, more or less, is I'm telling here that I want it to ignore everything that's under web, but then I don't want it to ignore really everything. So there's this little exclamation mark that allows you to say there is a rule, and now there is a not to the rule that I want to say. So if you're saying, please ignore everything that's under directory web, but don't ignore everything. So this would ignore stuff like the index.php, change log.txt, etc., etc. But if you then do this other rule, it says, but everything in directories under that, don't ignore, because then basically here it's going to specify that all the stuff that is actually part of Drupal core, so includes MISC, modules, themes is in the Drupal 7, and then do specify the rest, that settings should never go into the repo, and that files also should not go into the repo. We're not getting the bonus. Yeah, so the plans that I might have, and I would like to have to see somebody participate in open source contribution to Drupal. It would be nice to see a composer.json added to Drupal 7 core. That would allow us to remove the PHP requirements. And I personally am planning to create that command for Drush 9. It would be the same as we have already for Drush 8, where you can do a make generate, but there's no composer generate. We should be able to go into a site that's there. We have the code from Drush 8. It just wouldn't create a makefile, it would create a composer JSON. And that, my friends, is all that I would have to say for today. And I'm sorry, I think we're past the deadline now. If anybody has questions?
I have a couple questions, all are related to versioning system. Sorry, not versioning system, the version of code. First thing, semantic versioning. Is it always true that on the minor version we will always have a compatibility, backwards compatibility? Because in case of Node.js, those repository, it was not always true. Many times it occurs that updating corrupted the software. So how is it in Drupal community?
In Drupal core, that's very strictly enforced. Nothing, no new functionalities that could break backwards compatibility are committed in any minor version. That's why the tests are there. There might be exceptions, but those would be in the cases of the experimental modules. So you add migrate as an experimental module. There are a few other experimental modules in core. Those are not assured to have backwards compatibility because that's the nature of them being experimental. But except for those, you can rest assured that whatever works for Drupal with Drupal 8.4, for instance, should work for Drupal 8.5 or Drupal 8.6, and in the future until Drupal 9 comes along.
Okay, so there is two different approaches you are using. First, do not run composer update, but in case of backward compatibility, it should be basically okay everything.
No, the thing is, you never run composer update naked, let's say. Just going in and doing composer update and updating everything, unless you really want it, what's going to happen, which is a lot of stuff will get updated. Your site was working before with Symfony version whatever. So you really need the latest version of Symfony. If you do, probably you're okay with saying I need that version. But
yes, and it brings us to security updates to the components.
Yeah. So security updates, it's one of those things that unfortunately Composer, there's no way to actually specify to Composer this one is a security update, so you should advise people to...
Should do those security updates, especially the critical security updates, do those updates?
Well, yeah. Whenever you have... It's how you maintain your site. I mean, the thing is, if your client is running a site, it's seen by 1 million people, and it's working with 100 modules. Possibly you would want it that all the modules are always updated, but maybe if it's working, why break it? So it might be that at one point you will say, okay, it's been 1 year since we updated all the versions of the modules. Let's update everything so we're not afraid if a security release comes tomorrow of updating everything. But why update, I don't know, admin toolbar just because you need to update views? In that case, I think that you would specifically say, if I need a security update for views, do just composer update Drupal/views with dependencies, because it might need to update other stuff, but don't run it naked. That's basically what I'm saying, is you can run it with what you actually want to update, but updating everything, be careful.
Okay, two more questions, if my colleagues approve that. One is, whenever you don't want to post /vendor to repository because of obvious reasons, have you met any situation when the package was removed from public repository?
Yeah, I mean that is the fear that many people have. Honestly, if the package was removed from the repo, you have a problem, because your site was working at one point, and then suddenly that package that it was using is not going to exist anymore. But that's a problem you need to solve at one point in the future. At some point in the future, it might be your server goes down, and you don't, or I don't know, somebody deleted something, or you need a new version that changes the requirements in vendor. Having it all there doesn't actually solve it. If somebody deleted the package upstream, you're going to have to solve by moving to something else. I know that and also it doesn't happen that much. When it happens, it's some maintainer that got mad at something and decides to remove all the stuff that he contributed, and then the open source community comes in and creates a fork. That's the good thing about Drupal, is everything is GPL, so you can always put it back, and the author cannot say, oh, but I don't give you a license for that. He did already. I honestly don't see the need for a vendor to be committed.
Okay.
Then again, like I said, this is at development level. At deployment level, it might be useful to have another Git repo that's just a snapshot of the stuff that gets built on every new release. And that could have vendor and whatever.
Okay, last question. What in case with already existing page? I know after your speech, I know why the PM update was removed from Drush, the newest Drush. And for example, if I want to move all downloaded and installed modules on my site to Drush Composer, to Composer, is it possible?
Yeah, just run that command. You probably need to get the latest version from dev of Drush. Run that command that I showed. Run that. It will create a makefile for you. The only thing that probably you need to do is the libraries. I don't have time to show what would happen. But basically you need to transform. Go see the README. There's an example there of a library. It's very easy. You just say package this, get it from this zip file, and it's called, I don't know, my package. And then you need to require it also, and it just works. It's not that hard. Any more questions?
Yes, two questions. First, about this updating. So, how with Composer can you make sure that all security updates are in?
You can't. There is, like I said, there is no way that Composer knows. You can run something called Composer outdated. I can show it briefly. So here, if you run Composer outdated, it's going to tell you something. Eventually, network could be faster. So the thing is, Drush PM status could tell you that whatever is there is a security release. This doesn't exist for Composer. Unfortunately, like you see, Composer updated is telling me, yes, your version of Drupal core is outdated because there's version 8.4 available. Well done. Stupid. Composer outdated. I can't just update my site to Drupal 8 like that. And yeah, that Drush, there's a new version of it. Yes, I know. There's a new version of it. It doesn't work with Drupal 7, so I need to stay in Drush 8.
But the alternative would be Composer update. Yeah. And you say, well, don't do this because then you get too many updates that maybe break things, but I didn't understand because you say there's semantic versioning and it would make sure that you don't jump to a major version, does it? So what can go wrong with Composer update?
Basically, if you've got 100 modules, it could just update a lot. It's more or less it's more of configuration management. Did you really test that all the new features in the 100 modules that exist are safe and that your site doesn't break? That's the issue here. So if you just say, I need the new version of views, and you just say, Composer updates Drupal views, it will just update Drupal views. The rest of the modules will stay with whichever version they are. Drupal itself will tell you there are security releases for this and that, and you do Composer update for Drupal this and Drupal that, and those get updated. At some point you might decide, okay, we need to sync with all the latest versions of all the modules. In this sprint we are going to do a full regression test of the site, and we'll detect if there's a bug in this little module that we added because we needed some do add in some specific page. And there's a new version for it, and we're not sure if it breaks anything or not. And then you would test all the pages. You'd go to that do add, you'd see, is it working? Good, then we can update to the latest version of this module. That's just the thing. Like I said, unless you know what you're doing a naked composer update is dangerous. So you decide what you want to do. If you can test the whole site every sprint, perfect. If you've got like a full coverage testing suite in place that you even test the whole site every night, even better. Just run composer update every night. But unless you have that, and I don't know anyone that has that, don't. Yes, Chandip?
Could you run the same command again, please, but put -- direct at the end? So essentially, composer outdated shows you all of the Symfony dependencies, and if your site's quite out of date, you get all the Symfony stuff and non-Drupal stuff.
Yep.
Most of the time, I'm interested in seeing which modules are out of date, so it shows you the direct, like the top level without all of the dependencies. So in this case, Drupal core would be a direct. So you see, so the next command won't have Symfony. And here, it's a more useful thing in terms of Drupal, but also one of the benefits here is my own workflow is running through composer outdated direct, see what there is, and then each one of the dependencies I see there. So if it said Drupal /paragraphs, I would then do composer update --with -dependencies and paragraphs, because it would automatically get entity revisions, entity reference revision, and everything. So you should never really do a composer update without always doing the dependencies, but that's the steps that I've come across as best practice.
There's the dependencies is somewhere in here. I forgot where. I'll try to see if I can put this online somewhere. The bonus part that I didn't get to show is actually very nice if you're doing Drupal.org work. That thing is amazing. Yeah. So yeah, with dependencies, you should always run composer update -- with -dependencies. That's obvious. I'm not going to specify every little, and -y also so that it's not interactive. Okay, I think we're out of questions, and I believe, yeah, that's a good thing about being the last one. You can stay here until the party is on. We can even start the party now. Anybody got the vodka from Chandip?